Yesterday in science, we compared the weather, just kind of the average temperature in two different places. We looked at Sitka, Alaska, and we looked at Phoenix, Arizona. In general, what did you notice about the weather patterns in those places? Griffin.
One was really cold and one was really hot.
One was hot, one was cold. Which place was cold?
Alaska.
Sitka, Alaska was rather cold. Good. And so Phoenix was pretty hot. Joey, what else did you notice?
Alaska got more precipitation.
Alaska had a lot more precipitation, right? Their average, and I don't have mine written down, their average precipitation was what? Do you guys remember? Yeah, they had 80 some inches of precipitation. How did that compare to Phoenix? Haley?
Phoenix got only
Yep, and I put, they got 8, right? Wasn't it 8 inches altogether? But it was like on average each month, they had less than an inch. So they had about 8 inches of precipitation, but like monthly, they would have less than an inch of precipitation. Guys, that's insane. That's not very much at all. Especially when you compare that to a place like Sitka where there's 86 inches of precipitation a year. What else did we kind of come across as we were reading or learning about it? Kason. Yeah, they talked about one of the things that we noticed when we looked at Arizona is they had something extra. They had days of sunshine, and they had so many days or hours even of sunshine, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Like 3,000 some hours of sunshine a year. They added that in because that was big for them. Precipitation might not be huge for them, but getting sun is. They're getting sun all the time. Good. There it was, 3,832 days of sun, or days of sun. That doesn't seem right. Hours of sun. That's a lot of sun. Can't be days because, well, there's not 3,832 days in a year. So that must be hours. There's not that many days in a year. So that must have been hours and I miswrote it. Third graders, today what we're going to do is we are going to look at the weather in a few different places. Before we do that though, I want us to get a little bit more understanding of what climate is. And so we are going to go into page 165 of our science handbook. 165 of our science handbook. Go ahead and open it up. Today is going to be weather reading heavy. We're going to do lots of reading that's surrounded with weather, but we've got this. So, 164, 165. At the top here, we have where it talks about the climate. So that is the huge piece I want us to be able to take away from the next few days, is that really the difference between what is weather and what is climate. So one of the things that we really came across as weather or climate is that temperature, the weather patterns that you're seeing over a long period of time, and weather is the current situation, right? So our weather right now is about 32 and sunny. You need to write it up. Our climate, though, right now is going to be more what that long term is, what we're seeing over a long period of time. So we're going to read about climate on this page, and then we're going to take a pause, and we're going to do like a picture pause and focus on the picture down here a little bit. And then we're going to come over and we're going to read about Earth and the climate and do another picture pause. So all I need you to do to begin with is page 164. Just do the reading and then start to look through the picture a little bit. And we're going to do that picture pause and talk about it. So go ahead and do the reading on 164 and then take a look at the picture and see what you can learn. So our big takeaway up top again is just that idea of climate. And climate is the pattern of weather in a certain place over a long period of time. Weather changes, but climate is really just kind of narrowing in on what's happening year-round there. So when we look at our picture down here, we have 4 different places they're talking about, and they're looking at different places on the globe as well. So this is like They're trying to make it more spherical for you so you can see that it's the globe. We start over at the Sonoran Desert. And the Sonoran Desert we see it's in the United States. It's right there, and it's hot and it's dry. Have you ever been to a place that feels hot and dry?
Yeah.
I remember going to Arizona as a kid with my family, and that's how it felt. Like your throat even got dry. It just was not, and it's hot. It's miserable. We go over to Chicago, and I mean, you guys know where Chicago is?
Yeah.
Chicago's in Illinois. It's just northeast of where we are at, not too far away. Chicago can be hot or cold, dry or wet. What does that sound like, guys?
Nebraska.
That sounds like Nebraska. We have hot and cold, don't we?
Yeah.
That's part of our 4 seasons. We have really dry weather, and we have really wet weather. We get more wet weather, I would say, than Chicago, purely because we're a very humid place. We have a lot of moisture where we are at. We're going to go over to Antarctica, so going down to the bottom of our globe, all the way to Antarctica. And what do we know about their climate?
It's cold and dry.
It's cold and it's dry. They're not getting a ton of that precipitation throughout the year. It's dry, which is kind of crazy to think about, right? It's a dry area. And then Rio de Janeiro, it's in Brazil, in South America. And what do we know about it?
It's hot and wet.
It's hot and wet. So those descriptions right there are more talking about the climate. I don't have to say 32 degrees and sunny. That's the weather. The climate is really talking about it all year long. So our climate here in Nebraska is hot and cold, wet and dry. It's kind of a mixed climate, isn't it? Depending on the type of year. If I have never been to Rio de Janeiro, but I have a friend who lives near Rio de Janeiro, or lived. He lives in the United States now. And he said, he's like, it's sticky all the time. You just feel sticky. He's like, we don't wear a lot of clothes. Like they would wear like tank tops all the time because it's just hot. They're going to wear shorts all the time because it's hot. They're not going to be wearing full clothes like we are, right? Because it fits where they're at and it fits their weather patterns. He said it's just really sticky there. But now they live in, I want to say Texas. I could be making that up. I don't know where they live. His name's Andre.
I love that name.
Isn't that cool? You know what's really cool too about Andre is he played basketball for Nebraska a few years back. He's super tall. So like Andre the Giant. That's what we called him. Right? Isn't that cool? So that's more of that climate there that we have. And we're going to be thinking about. What we're going to read next is going to be Earth and climate. And we're going to learn a little bit about how Earth's axis changes the climate in different places as well. So the axis is one of our vocabulary words, and it's going to be that imaginary pole that runs through something. So right away, before we even begin reading, we see this red line here is the Earth's axis. So I'm going to grab my globe for us. Earth's axis would run through the North Pole to the South Pole. But as we notice, even in our picture here, as our Earth doesn't sit like this, perfect up and down, it's on a tilted axis, so it's like this all the time, okay? It's not going to wobble on it. We would be like hot, cold, shaking up. I don't know what we're doing here. It sits on its axis all the time. And as it rotates, it's also spinning like that.
Double spinning.
It is. It's double spinning. It's going around and it's spinning as well. So, but it's sitting on that axis at all times, okay? Our Earth on its axis makes one rotation every 24 hours. It takes, its rotation this way I was doing,
A year.
it takes 365 days. So every 24 hours it spins. That's a day. Every 365 days it makes it all the way around this rotation. That's a year. So it's what kind of helps us see those seasons, and it helps us see where we're our night and our day. And we're going to read a little bit about that, not a ton. It won't go too in depth about it. The Earth and the climate, kind of focusing in on that axis point of our Earth. So go ahead and read it, And then what I really want you to do is make connections between what you read up here and the picture we see down here as well. Go ahead and take a moment to read it. In our reading, we read about how Earth is on the axis like I talked about before we read, right? The sun has rays that are shining towards the Earth. We notice that they're kind of showing us that there's the point A rays versus the point B rays. If the sun is shining directly at a spot, what do we know about those rays?
It's gonna be sunny.
It's going to be what? They're hotter. They're more direct rays. It's hotter in those areas. We also have these other rays, like these ones. The Earth, because our Earth is tilted, we'll tilt it how they have it. Because our Earth is tilted, this is going to get that direct sun. These parts right here are going to get those spread out rays. What do we know about those ones? Ray.
They're in those places where it's spread out rays, it's colder because they're not direct sunlight.
Yeah, they're not going to be as direct sunlight. Now, as if our Earth is sitting on this axis, there are going to be points where this is not going to get nearly as much sun anyway, right? And depending on how it's tilting or turning, there's going to be even less. But we live right here at the top where these indirect rays are, where it's more spread out. So are we ever going to get that direct, super nice heat?
No.
No, but this is over where we saw Rio de Janeiro. Are they going to get more of that those direct rays? Yes. I took my honeymoon, my best vacation I ever took, because it's really the only vacation I've ever taken in my entire life, was over here in an island. So it was way far south of where we're at now. Do you think it was warmer?
Yeah.
Yeah, because it was going to get more of those direct rays, depending especially on the time of year that you went there, but more of those direct rays. Those places are going to be hotter. Today, and hopefully we'll get to it today, we'll see if we start it today, maybe finish it tomorrow, we are going to look at different places on the Earth and look at what their climate is throughout the year. Sound good? One thing I do want to bring your attention to is we do have a caption. How many of you remember to read the caption? So about half of you. Good. The sun's rays strike the area of Earth that includes point A at the steep angles, and point A has a warmer climate than point B because the sun's rays are more slanted. So we're just kind of looking at that and just re-describing what it just said. So I have a few questions for you. Are climates the same in all locations?
No.
Why not? Zoe, why not?
Because the climate is something that is the same.
But is it going to be the same in all locations?
No.
No, it can't be, right? Because of what? Earth's axis, because of it's going around. Because of what? Because of the Earth's rays, how they're hitting the Earth. All of these things are going to affect the climate. But again, our Earth sits steady on that axis, so it's not wobbling, right? So the climate isn't changing all the time. It's going to be that steady pattern of weather over a long period of time. Fabulous. We are going to stop our reading for there right now, and we're going to do a little activity. Sound good?